let the people out and entered. Of course, such a large building, we couldn't be its only passengers. It took a second, picking the floor. Not too high, but not too low either. Let it be the 18th. I poked the button randomly. The elevator stopped on almost every floor, letting passengers in and out like a blue whale, filtering water to extract plankton. The Chinese guy stood still without saying a word, looking straight ahead. I, on the other hand, was shifting from one foot to another. 5th floor. Last time I'd been here, this amount of time was enough for us to get to the penthouse. 6th. Blood pulsed in my temples. The box is about to fall out of my hands. Finally got tired and pushed the boxes to the guy. Here, take it. This is yours anyway. He accepted the load without any objections. 12th floor. There were fewer and fewer people in the cabin. Took off the jacket and the hat, dropped them on the top boxes. Alright, good enough. Thank you. I all but kicked him out of the elevator. The panel's button stood out surrounded by a great many nondescript buttons with numbers. Some of my courage and pressed it, but nothing happened. Pressed it again, but to no avail. God damn it. I've suffered so much and almost reached the end, only to fail because the fucking elevator was malfunctioning. Then I noticed a little keyhole next to the button. How come I hadn't noticed that before? When taking the elevator with Kagome last time, I had things on my mind other than studying the details. On the 16th floor, a middle-aged European man entered the elevator together with a Japanese guy, apparently a corporation employee, carrying a badge on the side of his jacket. Which floor, sir? He asked politely as possible. Oh, I realized that I didn't look like one of Kobayashi Jun's typical visitors. So I better off ignoring him, getting out of the elevator, finding another way up to the penthouse? No, that was too dangerous. An enthusiastic guy would definitely report a suspicious individual. You aren't Japanese, the man suddenly said in English. Obviously, I replied, surprised. Forgive my rudeness. He smiled politely. You weren't rude at all. What floor do you need to get to, young man? I decided to take the opportunity. The penthouse. The penthouse is a bit. The white-collar guy immediately got nervous. You have a meeting with Mr. Kobayashi? Yes. I didn't really understand what was going on, what strange man wanted from me, so I decided to speak honestly, but as little as possible. What a coincidence. So do I. Shall we go together? By the way, my name is Mikhail. Nick. I replied, still in English. It was hard to tell if he was Russian or from another Eastern European country. At this moment, I didn't much care, so I deliberately avoided a warm welcome with one of my countrymen. But sir, the Japanese employee said timidly. Oh, fuck. I thought I mistook this guy for Japanese guy. Nick also needs to get to Mr. Kobayashi's office. Let's not hold the elevator. The Japanese guy hesitated, sighed deeply, took out a key, and carefully turned it in the keyhole and stepped aside. Please. Mikhail confidently pressed the penthouse button. The elevator's ascent was again accompanied by an awful tune I hadn't paid any attention to when I'd entered with the Chinese guy. The closer we got to the floor I needed, the more uncomfortable I felt. There wasn't enough air in the cabin, and the pressure was rising, even though we were supposed to be going higher above the ground. On what business are you here, Nick, if I may ask? On what business? What? What do you want to discuss with Mr. Kobayashi? Well, personal matter. When we finally started going up to the penthouse, my newborn confidence faded away like fog above Kobayashi's skyscraper after rain. A personal question, huh? He squinted for a moment, losing his friendly look, but then smiled again. I understand. Nothing lasts forever. Even though some things seem to last for an eternity, one instant, no matter how long it drags on, inevitably gives way to another. Even stars on the galactic timescale die to then be reborn in a new form. Finally we arrived, and the elevator doors opened with an unpleasant sound. Mikhail and the employee accompanying him walked out while I remained in place. Are you coming? Oh, yeah, sure. I wouldn't have known what to tell Kobayashi Jun even if he'd been alone, and had even less idea about what to do now. The old man was indeed sitting at his desk with his back turned to us. After a couple seconds he turned around and prepared to greet his guests cordially. Ah, welcome. How was your flight, mister? He said in broken English and then noticed me. Nikolai. His mood immediately soured. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I managed to force out. Mikhail turned around and looked at me with surprise. Don't you see that this isn't the best moment? I have a meeting. There won't be another time. I blurted out and grit my teeth. I don't want to interfere. I have plenty of time, and if this is something urgent... Ah, yes, sorry, it really is urgent. I finally pulled myself together. Nikolai! The old man raised his voice, but his Japanese manners wouldn't let him start an argument in front of his guest. He was clearly troubled and didn't know what to do. Calling security and kicking me out would have been appropriate had I shown up in his office alone. Reputation is everything for the Japanese, so we couldn't do this in front of Mikhail. That was obvious. Had I finally come into some luck? Although I also couldn't start talking about Kagome while Mikhail was here. Even if I were to put aside my manners, Kobayashi Jun would react even worse than if we were alone. Mikhail, I'm sorry, but I really need to talk with Kobayashi-sama, I said in Russian. I understand. He replied briefly without an accent. That in itself didn't prove anything. The next second, he bowed to Kobayashi Jun and headed for the elevator. Wait. The CEO tried to stop him. It's nice to see that even this all-powerful man could find himself in a situation in which he was powerless. Happy now, Nikolai. Once the doors of the elevator closed, he nodded at the chair in front of his desk. Walked over and sat down, inwardly feeling something akin to triumph. Kobayashi-sama, first I want to ask you, Kagome, are you forcing her to stay here? Nikolai, there are still some aspects of our culture you fundamentally misunderstand. She's still a part of the family. I can't just force her to be here. He frowned, locked his fingers together, and leaned forward. Doesn't matter how you phrase it, the point remains the same. I know that Kagome decided to turn to you because we simply had no other choice. If she'd wanted to, she would have brought you along. She couldn't. I raised my voice, but immediately caught myself and shrunk back. And why is that? Why? Well, because... In reality, I didn't know the answer to that question. Yes, Kagome could have at least discussed her decision with me. Because she's her family, just like you said. And who am I? Especially after Ellie's kidnapping. At best, I'm just an annoying pest. At worst. I'm glad you can soberly judge your own capabilities. He suddenly smiled. I just don't understand one thing earlier. Why couldn't you... I hesitated for a moment, picking the right words. Her mother, and then her father. Kagome told me everything. Is that really how a family acts? I wasn't in any position to criticize him, but it stubbornly seemed to me that Kobayashi Jun paid more attention to how a person spoke, rather than the actual meaning of their words. As soon as he was bored of our conversation, I'd be kicked out of here forever, and might never see Kagome again. And you, on the contrary, know all about the perfect family. He suddenly changed the subject. Me? What do I have to do with this? Your parents worked for Soviet intelligence. From the very beginning, the whole time they'd spent in Japan. That's not true. I forced myself to object, although deep inside, an understanding was growing that this person wouldn't throw around baseless accusations. Did I really know my parents that little? In any case, what does that have to do with Kagome? You think I'd allow my granddaughter to be with a Soviet spy? A Soviet spy? I smirked powerlessly and flung my arms in the air. Kobayashi-sama, what are you talking about? I am just a high schooler, not even among the best. Sins of the father, he said admonishingly. Would you want your grandchildren to answer for your sins? Apparently I hit the target. For a second, a hint of annoyance flickered across his face. You haven't always been honest as either, even with yourself. Circumstances forced you to pretend you didn't have a daughter, and then a granddaughter, that being your profitable marriage. How do you know that? His cheekbones bulged on his face. Kobayashi Jun looked like he was about to lose it. But a near century of life experience wouldn't allow the old man to lose face in front of a child. He managed to restrain himself, leaned back, and smiled. I didn't think Kagome knew about it. But she does. This changes nothing. Those are matters of days long gone, and you and I are discussing much more pressing questions. So what do you want, Nikolai? What do I want? I repeated as if there was a key to Wonderland and the answer to that question. I want you to let us live like we used to. Kagome hasn't done anything wrong. Well, apart from kidnapping Ellie, of course. People make mistakes. Teenagers in that sense outmatch everybody else. But everything's fine now. Fine. How exactly do you define fine? Kagome had managed to fool me up to a point, but no more. Yes, I'll be frank. I didn't realize that she harbored such a deep grudge against me. And knowing all that, you still want to... He raised his hand and stopped me. But she and I had a thorough conversation and settled everything. So that's what you call it now. Kagome's scared face and the way she'd been carried over the turnstile appeared before my eyes. Although the old man must have had a different view on the situation. Nikolai, remember your place. I was in fact crossing the line. Kobayashi Jun had decided to talk to me as if I were his equal for a moment, and I began to believe that there was a chance. It was just a game of cat and mouse. The cat releases the mouse, lets it run away a little, only to catch it again between its claws. Kobayashi-sama, there is nothing I can do to change your decision. I'm surprised I'm even sitting here talking with you in the first place. If you've decided to hear me out, did I really think this cruel old man's heart would suddenly soften, touched by my fiery speech and giving his blessing to me and Kagome? That sort of thing only happened in Kyosuke's manga. Don't be mistaken, Nikolai. Your parents were spies. I'm simply interested in the limits of audacity the KGB is prepared to go to. Do you really think that I came here as a Soviet spy? Or a Soviet citizen? Unable to hold back anymore, I shouted and jumped off the chair. Not a muscle twitched on Kobayashi-jun's face. I've come here for the girl I love. Because I believe that we could still be together, and after everything that's happened, well, it happened because it did. But it's not the end. I know that Kagome loves me too. The fact that you happen to be her grandfather is no less of an accident than that we ended up in the same class. You've never been involved in her life. If her mother hadn't told her about you, that's how it would have stayed. Why do you need Kagome? Yes, I understand that we kidnapped Ellie, but that's in the past, and Ellie herself has forgiven us, I'm sure of it. Then why can't you just let us live a peaceful life? Kobayashi-jun listened to my hysterical outburst quietly, and when I was finally done, uttered coldly, "Have you asked her what she wants?" I didn't know what to say to that. Deep inside there was a hope that my feelings were mutual, but I couldn't be absolutely sure. You're right, Nikolai. I don't need to listen to all this, and I should have called security long ago. But somehow, I like you. You remind me of myself in my younger years. I'm ready to turn a blind eye to that little incident with Elizabeth if you leave the country immediately. Don't you understand yet that I won't go anywhere without Kagome? I whispered in desperation, but the old man somehow managed to hear me. Fine. Let's ask Kagome herself, then. He grabbed the receiver of one of the phones sitting on the table and said briefly, "Bring Kagome Iwamura-san in." I knew that he was playing in the open and was fully confident in his cards. I also knew what Kagome would say. Yet morally, I wasn't at all prepared. Long minutes passed by in silence. Kobayashi-jun was studying some documents, while I sat in the chair looking outside the window at Tokyo spread out at the foot of the corporation's building, like Gorgoroth at the foot of Mount Doom. Finally, Kagome seemed to appear out of nowhere in the office. I hadn't heard the footsteps, nor a knock at the door, nor even the sound of the elevator going up. Did you call for me? I turned around and looked at Kagome, as she was giving a respectful bow. Nico-san. For a moment I could see astonishment in her face, but she immediately regained control of herself. Come closer. The old man drew himself away from the papers and made an inviting gesture, indicating that Kagome should come next to him. She passed by me, and I immediately felt like the girl was shaking. Maybe not physically, but I could sense it mentally. Please, tell Nikolai everything you told me before. Kagome started without even raising her head. Nico-san, it won't work out between us. You'd be better off leaving Japan since you don't like this country and don't understand its culture. I am grateful for the time we spent together, but Grandfather Kobayashi has explained what is better for me. It's to be with him, Father, and Grandfather Moriyuki. Kagome. I knew immediately that she would never said any of that of her own free will. So this damned old man was threatening her family again. That knowledge didn't change a thing. I was still powerless to do anything. What's the point of this charade? I asked Kobayashi-jun. Why bother calling her in to read your bullshit script? Do you really think I haven't got to know Kagome well enough to realize that's not how she really feels? Yet this move of his turned out to be quite effective. Even if Kagome's words didn't come from the heart, hearing something like that from the person you love was still hard. Nico-san. She weakly tried to object, only to let out a sob and fall silent. Yes, I suppose that wasn't the best idea, the old man said, either seriously or simply mocking me. No, wait a minute. If I was put before the fact anyway, it would have been stupid not to make use of the situation. What do you plan to do next, then? Do you want to renounce her family, her father, the memory of her mother who you abandoned? You understand nothing, Nikolai. For a moment, extreme frustration flashed across his face. I stole a glance at Kagome, but it was as if she hadn't heard my words about her mother. I don't have to be a genius to understand what your top priority is. If the circumstances were different, would Kagome be standing next to you right now? Nico-san. Kagome raised her eyes to me, pleading. Don't. You're only making it worse for everyone. Sorry for trying to... I stopped short, bit my lip, and looked out the window. Past Kagome and her grandfather, at the skyscraper across from Kobayashi Corporation's headquarters. Wonder if there was another petulant old man sitting there, ruining other people's lives. Why are you even doing this? I addressed Kobayashi-jun once again. Let us go and you'll never hear from us again. Let you go. He smirked and caressed his beard. Nikolai, you're all grown up now, I must understand what is and isn't acceptable in this country. But the accursed old man was right from any point of view you'd consider adult. If he had been so desperate to hide the fact that he had an illegitimate daughter, then here's an idea. Kobayashi-sama. I started, a devilish smile on my face. If you were so against people finding out you had children out of wedlock, why do you need Kagome? Her existence alone is proof. Are you so sure about that? He smirked once again. Well, Really, what did I know about Japan's clan system? Daughter, granddaughter, was there any difference between them, or did sins of the father not automatically transfer to the next generation of the family? What arguments did I even have left? And you, what are you just standing there for? Say something, it's you we're talking about. Nika-san. Kagome still avoided looking at me. You know, I understand why you're doing this. I do. But this is just damn wrong. I don't need this kind of protection, believe me. I was ready to snap, fiercely whipping my head from side to side, unable to fix my gaze on either Kobayashi-Jun or Kagome. Nikolai, your hysterics are inappropriate, the old man said calmly. And if that is all, go. He told Kagome, tilting his head slightly. The girl obediently followed his order. This was probably the first time I'd ever seen Kagome so helpless. Even after her father had been kidnapped, even after their restaurant had burned down, even when we had to escape Tokyo, Kagome always had kept fighting. But now she looked like a sailor facing the 30-meter-tall wave, bearing down on his schooner. Defeat, desperation, fatalism. Could this be the fate she had been talking about? Kagome had decided to sacrifice herself for the sake of her grandfather, father, and... I could keep arguing with Kobayashi-Jun. Could probably even jump over the desk and try to strangle him. But it would all end the same way, with my defeat. And most importantly, wouldn't it make her sacrifice obsolete? Kagome would remain in his hands, but if I kept resisting, she'd know that a part of it was for nothing. Fine. I understand. I stood up without looking at Kobayashi-Jun and dragged myself to the elevator. I'm delighted we managed to find a solution that satisfies everyone, Nikolai. I heard his mocking voice behind my back. Before I had time to press the button, its doors opened themselves, and Mikhail walked out of the cabin, accompanied by a few serious-looking men of European appearance, clad in suits, and a couple of Japanese, clearly not corporation employees. "Are you done already?" he asked me in English, in a much less friendly tone than before. "Yes." "Good. And it's our turn." I suddenly felt it in my guts that this wasn't just a business meeting. This grim-looking group needed something from the old man, while I'd prefer not to meet them. So instead of obediently walking to the elevator and going down to the hall, I walked out of the office on tiptoes, held the door with my hand, and started to listen. "Mr. Kobayashi, you know who we are. We're going to have a difficult conversation." "What are you doing here?" Somebody put his huge hand on my shoulder and roughly pulled me away from the door. Kagamaru stood before me. "Nothing. I'm actually just leaving." He squinted, but still relaxed his hand and let me go. "Go then." So Kobayashi-Jun had enough problems of his own. I went down to the first floor, walked out of the elevator, and sat on the sofa opposite the reception desk. And yet, these guys looked dangerous. What could Kobayashi Corporation have done? In any case, the old man had more important matters to deal with than his newfound granddaughter. First, I needed to speak with Kagome. Somehow it seemed to me that after the show organized by the old man in his office, she wouldn't be guarded so heavily. I walked to the reception desk and asked them whether they saw a girl, describing Kagome to the best of my ability. Luckily, they told me that a girl like that had just walked out of the building. Perfect. I ran to the exit, then out of the building, crossed the road, and saw Kagome sitting on a bench in the square. "I finally caught up with you." I came closer and stood next to her. "Nico-san." For a moment, she looked at me with eyes full of sadness. "I guess we have nothing left to talk about anymore." "That's not true. I know why, and for who you're doing all this. But you don't have to sacrifice yourself in our love." I just saw a few serious-looking guys entering old man Kobayashi's office. Didn't look like he was particularly happy to see them. "Does that tell you anything?" "No. Should it?" She responded weakly. "Well, of course. I don't really understand what's going on, but something is definitely going on. Think for yourself. Your father's work, the project, the documents we saw, my parents." Kobayashi-Jun claimed they were Soviet spies, and he clearly believed what he said. To be honest, I'm not ready to claim the opposite right now, no matter how much I'd like to. Slowly but steadily, pieces of some sort of large puzzle had started to come together in my head, on a subconscious level for now. It was like I could feel the big picture, the texture of the canvas, the roughness of its wooden frame, the unevenness of the oily paint, but I couldn't see yet what was on it. "Kagome, I need to meet your father. They must have released him by now." "Why?" She asked me in a lifeless voice. It doesn't matter, I just need to, trust me. If I'm wrong, if nothing works, I'll leave Japan without any objections, just like your new grandfather wants. Nico-san, I don't know. She looked even more helpless than in Kobayashi-jun's office. So has he been released? Yes. Can you call him? Yes. Seems she was giving me and our love one last chance. Then do it. I said goodbye to Kagome and told her I'd definitely find her when everything was over. Akira Shinji was waiting for me in the park, in the quiet place where Catherine and I used to spend time together. I noticed an older man sitting on a bench, came closer and greeted him. Akira-san? Nikolai-kun. He stood up and gave me an appraising glance, but didn't reach out to shake my hand. Of course that would have been normal if I'd been Japanese, but I wasn't, and Akira Shinji must have known my father. We finally meet. I've heard about you from my daughter, but everything you two have been through for me. And I'm grateful. Much to my surprise, he bowed briefly, then frowned again. However, I don't understand. What did you want to see me for? You're right. Kagome has gone through a lot for you. She's in a difficult situation now. I gather you understand? Kobayashi-jun. Yes, it's mostly about him. I don't know whether it's about his newly found grandfatherly feelings or something else, but Kagome has become just another employee in his corporation at best. And at worst... I sighed and shifted my gaze to the pond that now looked cold and lifeless. I understand. Akira-san lowered his head and avoided looking at me. I told her before. What is there to do now? I have a solution. What kind? He looked at me confused. You were pretty high up in the project, right? Right. Kagome's father responded with some effort, like a person who'd been keeping a secret for many years, but was finally forced to share it with someone else. I was in Kobayashi-jun's office earlier, and got a visit from some serious-looking Europeans. What? Akira-san straightened up, which even seemed to make him look younger. Thing is, my father was an engineer who escaped from the USSR. He also used to work on the project too. Yes, I knew him. Well, finally, a woman from the KGB has been following me around for some time now. He opened his mouth, apparently about to say something, but in the end, couldn't seem to find the right words. See, I couldn't piece together all the details before, see them as the full picture in my head. Yeah, something's going on. Something important and serious. But what do I have to do with it when I can... And what can I offer? I'm sure that my parents' death wasn't an accident, and I can't forgive Kobayashi-jun for that. But right now we're talking about Kagome. I'm afraid to even imagine what you were doing for that project of yours, and it doesn't matter now. But you know, and that's what matters. And information is the most important resource in the world. What? But you know, and that's what matters. Okay, that's a weird sentence. Where are you going with this, Nikolai? Akira-san's expression was growing darker and darker as he gradually figured out what was on my mind. That one from the KGB wants to obtain any information about Kobayashi-jun and Corporation. And meeting the head of the project would be an excellent bargaining chip. Do you understand that this is treason? He spelled it out slowly. Treason of what? Japan's national interest? And what you did back there, didn't that go against basic human values? I took a risk. After all, Mikhail and company clearly had a reason to be interested in Kobayashi Corporation. And yet... Akira-san turned away. It immediately became clear that it was hard for him to look me in the eye after everything I'd said. If old man Kobayashi knew that you've become a turncoat. He flinched as if someone had run an electric charge through his body. I understand what it sounds like. Just listen to me. My parents fled the USSR. Of course they had their reasons. Maybe in part they did it for me. Think about Kagome. Is this the future you want for her? Kobayashi-jun has already shown he isn't going to do her any harm. Oh wait, the wrong guy. He objected timidly. Maybe not physically. What about Kagome's own dreams for her future? We weren't kidnapped for no reason. He'll just keep using you to threaten her. It's a vicious equilibrium, a cruel system of checks and balances, to force one to be silent and the other to obey. Of course you're right. Kagome's no stranger to him. He cares for her in his own way. If it had been anyone else but her, I'm sure you wouldn't have seen daylight again for the rest of your life. Was that a bit too much? What happened to me in the USSR? Akira-san asked all of a sudden. It seemed like he had thought about something like this before. To be honest, I don't know. I responded, trying to be as open and sincere as possible. But I think valuable people are valuable people everywhere. At least that's what the major from the KGB told me. That was indeed true. We remained quiet for a while, and finally Akira-san said, Nikolai-kun, I'm not gonna lie to you. I've already been thinking about what I've already been thinking that we wouldn't really have a life under the boot of Kobayashi Corporation. I've also thought about my daughter's future. But what you're suggesting... You know, life isn't linear. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? I'm Tried to force a smile, but made a shitty job of it. Maybe we'll meet again soon, just in a few years. It's you two who are just beginning their lives. He smiled in turn, sadly, but still better than me. At least talk to her. I'm confident nobody will try to kidnap you in the center of Tokyo in the middle of the day. Akira-san thought hard about it. Obviously, it wasn't a very fair play, as forcing Kagome's father to make a sacrifice for his daughter basically was putting him in a position where he simply couldn't refuse. But the sacrifice itself was terrible. I didn't know what motherland and patriotism meant to Akira Shinji. But clearly they were more important to him than to me, a young man who hadn't really lived in the USSR, and according to Kagome, hadn't really assimilated into Japan either. And what if... He didn't finish the sentence, just stared at me with suffering in his eyes, as if expecting something. It's just a talk. I tried to smile as sincerely as possible. Immediately realized that I was acting almost like Irina, trying to persuade someone to cooperate with the KGB. By this point, I really had no choice. Fine. He finally agreed. Wait here. I'll be just a moment. I ran to the nearest telephone box, found the telephone number of the Soviet embassy from an information center, called them, and asked them to tell Irina Mostovaya that I'd be waiting for her in the park. Of course, they told me that there wasn't, and had never been anyone with that name at the embassy, but I was sure the KGB took messages of this sort seriously. And so they did, because Irina appeared in the park just 40 minutes later. Akira-san, this is Irina. While I've been waiting for her, I'd started to feel confident that everything was going too smoothly. When the KGB major finally appeared, I suddenly got scared. Akira-san, pleasure to meet you. She bowed deeply, but Kagome's father didn't react like a polite Japanese man ought to. Just tilted his head squeamishly. Nikolai, we need to talk in private. What? But I quickly realized it was foolish to argue with her. For something like that, I couldn't even pretend to be a middleman. I was, at best, a delivery guy, to who a generous client might give a tip. Although that wasn't the custom in Japan. They talked for a while and kept their voices down. I tried to listen in, but couldn't hear a word. Irina recrossed her legs a couple of times, but generally remained still. Akira-san, on the other hand, somehow bent over unnaturally and almost studied the park's flora. Finally, Irina cast a glance in my direction, smiled, and called me over with a gesture. Walked to her, stood next to them. Thank you, Nikolai, for organizing this meeting. Her smile had become even cuter, but I already knew there was nothing pleasant behind it. I don't know what you've agreed upon. I guess I'm better off that way. There's also something I want out of this. I tried to speak confidently, but my voice kept breaking like I was a vassal begging to a sovereign. Yes, of course. She replied absentmindedly, took a pack of cigarettes out of her bag, opened it, but apparently changing her mind, put it back. Akira-san will take care of everything, right, Akira-san? Kagome's father nodded quickly without looking me in the eyes. Take care of what, if I may ask? I'll call Kobayashi Jun and handle what we've talked about. I knew you'd make the right decision. I'm so grateful to you. I'm indebted to you for life. Nothing I could say would sweeten the pill I'd practically shoved down his throat. Maybe I'd done the right thing. What I had to do. There are situations where both parties are in the right, in and of themselves, but not in regards to each other. 2 minuses make a plus. The correct action is born out of something that hurts both parties. I just lowered my head and mumbled. Thank you. I turned around and slowly walked towards the exit of the park. Take care of my daughter. Take care of Kagome. I heard him call after me. I stopped for a moment, but immediately continued my mournful walk, saying goodbye to that brave man forever. Holy shit. Things are heating up, but unfortunately I think that's going to be the spot where I end it here for tonight. My god. You know, I'm not going to lie. I did not expect all of this. Everything that's happened. After I thought the kidnapping was going to be like the peak of the story, and then everything kind of resolves itself from there. I didn't know how it was going to resolve itself, but I thought like, I was pretty sure I was like near the end of the route. That's where my mind was. I thought like, okay, like obviously I've kind of already resigned to myself that letting Ellie go was the wrong choice in terms of letting the story continue, right? But I totally expected that I was going to finish this route today. I had no idea everything was going to devolve the way it did. And then, you know, when they moved out to the village, I thought that was it. Okay, that's the ending. They lived happily ever after in the village. Oh no, because things weren't happily ever after there. Of course Kagome couldn't abandon her family like that. And then just everything that has happened since then, my god. I can only imagine where all the other routes go. The fact that this route has just gone as insane as it has, it's just, it's so wild. It's so wild. And the fact that there's even more. There's even more. This isn't the end. We're not done. There's more to this story. Holy fuck. But like I said, this is where I'm going to end this recording session for today. So it's either going to be a jump cut or a new video, but regardless, I'll see y'all in the next recording session. Till then, peace.